Vanessa Harper had spent 3 weeks preparing for this day. At 33, she'd been appointed store director of Morrison Department, store's flagship Minneapolis location, one of the youngest executives in the company's 70-year history, and the first black woman to hold the position at any Morrison location nationwide. The appointment came after 12 years working her way up through Morrison's retail management structure. She'd started as a sales associate during college, became assistant manager within 2 years, managed her own department by 25, and served as assistant store director at Morrison's Chicago location for the past 4 years. Her performance reviews were exceptional. Her stores consistently exceeded sales targets while maintaining high employee satisfaction and low turnover. When Morrison's corporate leadership decided their struggling Minneapolis flagship needed fresh leadership and new direction, they'd offered Vanessa the position. The store had been underperforming for 3 years, losing market share to newer retailers and online shopping. Customer satisfaction scores were declining. Employee morale was low. The previous director had retired after failing to reverse the trends. Vanessa's mandate was clear: turn around Morrison Minneapolis within 18 months or corporate would consider closing the location. It was a tremendous opportunity and an enormous challenge. She'd spent her first 2 weeks in the position working from Morrison's regional office, reviewing financial reports, analyzing customer data, studying employee records, and developing her turnaround strategy. Today was her first day physically at the Minneapolis store, though she'd deliberately not announced her arrival. She wanted to observe operations as they actually functioned before staff knew the new director was present. Vanessa arrived at Morrison Department Store at 9:45 on a Tuesday morning. The store had opened at 9, so early morning operations would be underway, but the building wouldn't yet be crowded with customers. She dressed professionally but not ostentatiously, tailored black pants, a burgundy blouse, comfortable but elegant shoes. She carried her leather work bag containing her laptop, the orientation materials from Human Resources, and her new Morrison Executive Identification Badge, which she'd deliberately left in her bag rather than wearing visibly. She also carried 2 Morrison shopping bags containing purchases she'd made online the previous week, new sheets for her apartment, and a kitchen appliance. The items had been delivered to her home, but she'd kept them in Morrison bags, planning to return one item and exchange the sheets for a different color. It gave her a reason to visit the customer service desk and observe how returns were handled. Walking into Morrison's grand entrance, Vanessa immediately began her assessment. The exterior looked tired, the brass fixtures needed polishing, and the window displays seemed dated compared to competitors. Inside, the lighting was adequate but not inspiring. The layout felt cluttered rather than curated. Small issues, but they contributed to an overall impression of a store that had lost its prestige. Vanessa walked slowly through the main floor, observing everything. A cosmetics counter had good product displays, but the associate was on her phone rather than engaging potential customers. The handbag section had beautiful merchandise, but poor lighting that didn't showcase the products properly. The men's department had a clearance rack blocking the main aisle, creating an obstacle rather than an invitation. She made mental notes of everything, planning to address these issues systematically once she officially started. For now, she was just gathering information. As Vanessa walked toward the escalators to visit the second floor, she noticed a man in a security uniform watching her intently. He was middle-aged, stocky, with close-cropped gray hair and the bearing of someone who took his authority very seriously. His name tag identified him as Brad Hutchins, security chief. Vanessa noticed Hutchins following her as she rode the escalator to the second floor. At first, she assumed he was simply making his rounds. Security personnel often walked the store floors during operating hours. But when she moved to the housewares department and Hutchins positioned himself nearby, still watching her, she realized he wasn't randomly patrolling. He was specifically following her. The realization was both frustrating and grimly unsurprising. Vanessa had experienced retail racial profiling before. Despite her professional success and obvious legitimacy as a customer, she'd been followed in stores, watched suspiciously by sales associates, and had her payment methods questioned. It happened less frequently now that she was older and carried visible markers of professional success, but it still happened. She decided to test her suspicion. She walked to the bedding section, picked up a decorative pillow, examined it, then set it back down. Hutchins moved closer. She walked to kitchenware, looked at a set of mixing bowls, and put them back. Hutchins was now less than 20 feet away, pretending to examine merchandise but clearly watching her. Vanessa felt anger rising but remained calm. She was about to become this man's supervisor. His behavior was not only personally offensive, but also represented exactly the kind of poor customer service and discriminatory practice that damaged Morrison's reputation and drove away customers. She would address it, but professionally and through proper channels. She took the escalator back to the first floor, planning to complete her observation and then go to the Human Resources office to officially check in for her first day. Hutchins followed her down the escalator. At the bottom, Vanessa walked toward customer service, still carrying her 2 Morrison shopping bags with items she'd legitimately purchased. Hutchins suddenly moved quickly, positioning himself directly in front of her, blocking her path. "Excuse me, ma'am. I need you to come with me." Vanessa stopped, startled by the aggressive approach. "I'm sorry. What? I'm Brad Hutchins, Chief of Security. I need you to accompany me to the security office." "For what reason?" "I've been observing your behavior in the store. I have concerns about potential theft." Vanessa felt shock and fury. "Theft? I haven't stolen anything. Ma'am, I've watched you moving through multiple departments, handling merchandise, and you're carrying bags from this store. I need to verify the contents and review receipts." Several customers were stopping to watch the confrontation. Vanessa was acutely aware of the scene being created, of the humiliation of being accused of theft in front of shoppers and employees. "These bags contain items I purchased online from Morrison and had delivered to my home. I'm here to return one item. I have receipts and can show you everything." "Then you won't mind showing me in the security office?" "I absolutely mind. You've been following me through this store based on no evidence of wrongdoing. You're racially profiling me." Hutchins's expression hardened. "This has nothing to do with race. I'm doing my job, which is preventing theft. Your refusal to cooperate is making the situation worse." "I'm not refusing to cooperate. I'm refusing to be treated like a criminal when I've done nothing wrong." A store manager approached, a young white woman who looked deeply uncomfortable. "Is everything okay here?" Hutchins turned to her. "This customer is refusing to verify her purchases. I'm asking her to come to the security office." The manager looked at Vanessa. "Ma'am, if you could just show Brad your receipts, this can be resolved quickly." Vanessa pulled receipts from her purse and held them out. "Here, receipts for everything in these bags. Purchased online, delivered to my home, bringing one item back for exchange." The manager looked at the receipts and then at Hutchins. "Brad, these are legitimate purchases. I think there's been a misunderstanding." Hutchins took the receipts and examined them with obvious skepticism. "These could be forged. I see people come in with fake receipts all the time. You're accusing me of forging receipts now?" Vanessa's voice remained controlled, but her anger was evident. "What possible evidence do you have for that accusation? The way you were moving through the store, handling merchandise, then putting it back, not making any purchases. It's suspicious behavior. It's called shopping. People look at merchandise before deciding whether to buy it. That's how retail works." More customers had gathered, some recording the confrontation on their phones. One customer, a white woman in her 50s, spoke up. "This is ridiculous. She showed you receipts. Leave her alone." Hutchins ignored the comment and reached for his radio. "I'm calling Minneapolis police to settle this matter." "You're calling the police because I looked at merchandise in a store." Vanessa's professional composure was fracturing under the absurdity and injustice of the situation. "I'm calling police because you're being uncooperative, and I have reasonable suspicion of criminal activity." "Reasonable suspicion based on what?" "The fact that I'm black. Based on your behavior and your attitude." The store manager intervened again. "Brad, I really think we should let this go. She has receipts. She hasn't done anything wrong." "Jessica, I'm the security chief. I make security decisions. This woman is coming to the security office, or she's being detained until police arrive." Vanessa made a decision. She pulled her phone from her bag and dialed a number she'd been given during her orientation. It connected to Morrison's corporate security director in the regional office. "This is Vanessa Harper, the new store director for Minneapolis. I'm in the store right now being accused of theft and threatened with arrest by your security chief Brad Hutchins. I need you to contact Minneapolis immediately and authorize my credentials." She handed the phone to Hutchins. "Your corporate superior wants to speak with you." Hutchins took the phone skeptically. "This is Brad Hutchins." Vanessa couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she watched Hutchins's expression change from skeptical to confused to horrified as the corporate security director apparently confirmed her identity and position. "Yes, sir. I understand." "No, I didn't know." She wasn't wearing identification. I thought, yes sir, right away. Hutchins handed the phone back to Vanessa, his face now pale. Miss Harper, I apologize. I didn't realize you weren't wearing your badge, and you thought a young black woman carrying shopping bags must be a shoplifter. You followed me through the store, accused me of theft despite having receipts, threatened to call police, and created a humiliating public scene, all based on your assumption that I didn't belong here. The gathered customers had heard the exchange. Several looked shocked. One began applauding. The store manager, Jessica, looked like she wanted to disappear. I was following standard security protocols. Hutchins tried to explain, his voice weak. No, you were racially profiling a customer, and it happens that the customer you profiled is your new boss. But the bigger issue is how many other black customers you've profiled who weren't in a position to call corporate and prove their innocence. Hutchins had no response. Vanessa turned to Jessica. Please show me to the Human Resources office. I need to officially check in, and then I'll be meeting with all department heads, including Mr. Hutchins. Jessica led Vanessa through the store to the administrative offices on the 3rd floor. Employees whispered as they passed. Word was spreading quickly that the new store director had just been racially profiled and nearly arrested by the store's own security chief. In the HR office, Vanessa completed her check-in paperwork, while HR director Karen Simmons apologized profusely. Miss Harper, I'm so sorry about what happened. Brad Hutchins has been with Morrison for 28 years and this is unacceptable. How many complaints has he received about discriminatory treatment of customers? Karen hesitated. I'd need to review his personnel file. Please do that immediately and have it ready for our meeting this afternoon. Also pull any customer complaints about security harassment or racial profiling at this store for the past 3 years. Vanessa spent the next 2 hours in what was now her office, reviewing the materials Karen brought. Brad Hutchins's personnel file showed he'd been hired in 1996 as a security guard, promoted to security supervisor in 2004, and made security chief in 2012. His performance reviews were generally positive, emphasizing his diligence and commitment to loss prevention, but buried in the file were complaints. 7 formal complaints over the years from employees or customers alleging that Hutchins had racially profiled black customers, followed them unnecessarily, or treated them with suspicion not applied to white customers. Each complaint had been investigated minimally, with Hutchins denying any bias and management accepting his denials. The most recent complaint was from 4 months ago. Customer complaint records were even more troubling. Over the past 3 years, Minneapolis Morrison had received 41 complaints about security harassment. 33 of those complaints came from black customers, describing experiences similar to what Vanessa had just endured, being followed, questioned, accused of theft without evidence, or treated rudely by security staff. The pattern was undeniable. Brad Hutchins had been systematically profiling and harassing black customers for years, and Morrison's management had failed to address it effectively. At 2 o'clock, Vanessa called a mandatory meeting of all department heads and managers. 15 people gathered in the conference room, including Brad Hutchins, who sat at the far end of the table, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Vanessa stood at the head of the table and introduced herself. Good afternoon. I'm Vanessa Harper, your new store director. Some of you witnessed what happened this morning. For those who didn't, I'll explain briefly. I entered this store as a customer, carrying legitimate purchases, and your security chief followed me, accused me of theft, threatened me with arrest, and created a public confrontation based on racial profiling. She let that sink in before continuing. This incident is unacceptable on multiple levels. First, it was personally humiliating and offensive to me. Second, it represents terrible customer service that drives away the very shoppers we need to attract. Third, it exposes Morrison to legal liability for discrimination. And fourth, it reveals systematic problems with how this store operates that I'm here to fix. Vanessa pulled up data on the screen. Over the past 3 years, this store has received 41 complaints about security harassment. 33 came from black customers. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern of discriminatory treatment that should have been addressed long ago but wasn't. She looked directly at Hutchins. Mr. Hutchins, you're suspended effective immediately pending a full investigation of your conduct and practices. You'll turn in your badge and access credentials before leaving today. The investigation will determine whether your employment continues. Hutchins started to object, but Vanessa cut him off. I'm not interested in excuses about protocols or denials of bias. The evidence is overwhelming. You've been profiling black customers for years. Complaints have been filed, and this morning you profiled your own new boss. Your suspension is not negotiable. She addressed the rest of the room. Everyone in this room needs to understand that things are changing at Morrison, Minneapolis. We will not tolerate discrimination against customers or employees. We will provide excellent service to everyone who walks through these doors, regardless of their race, age, appearance, or any other factor. If you can't commit to that standard, you should seek employment elsewhere. The meeting continued for another hour as Vanessa outlined her vision for the store's transformation. She emphasized customer service, employee empowerment, updated merchandising, and explicit commitment to creating a welcoming environment for all shoppers. After the meeting, Vanessa met privately with Karen from Human Resources and Morrison's corporate legal counsel, who joined by video conference. The legal counsel, Michael Torres, was direct. "Miss Harper, what happened to you this morning gives you grounds for a personal legal action against Morrison for discrimination. Corporate wants you to know that we take this extremely seriously and will support whatever steps you decide to take regarding Brad Hutchins." "I'm not interested in personal legal action against the company I work for," Vanessa replied, "but I am interested in systematic changes that prevent what happened to me from happening to any other customer. That means not just addressing Hutchins, but examining our entire security culture and training. We support that completely. What do you need from corporate?" "First, complete Brad Hutchins' investigation quickly and professionally. If the evidence supports termination, which I believe it will, then terminate him. Second, hire an outside consultant to review our security practices and recommend changes. Third, implement mandatory anti-bias training for all security staff at every Morrison location. Fourth, create a customer relations position specifically focused on addressing discrimination complaints. And fifth, publicly acknowledge what happened and commit to doing better." Michael nodded. "I'll bring those recommendations to the executive team, but I can tell you they'll be approved." What happened this morning was a wake-up call for Morrison Corporate. We've had complaints about profiling at other locations too. This is an opportunity to address a company-wide problem. Over the next 2 weeks, the investigation into Brad Hutchins proceeded. Investigators interviewed employees and reviewed records. They discovered that Hutchins had maintained informal statistics tracking shoplifting incidents, and his records showed he suspected and detained black customers at rates far exceeding their representation among store visitors. They also found that Hutchins had trained newer security staff to watch for what he called high-risk customer profiles, which included young black men, groups of black teenagers, and black women carrying large bags. His training materials, never approved by corporate, essentially taught racial profiling. The evidence was overwhelming. Morrison terminated Brad Hutchins' employment 3 weeks after the incident with Vanessa. He hired an attorney and threatened wrongful termination litigation, but Morrison's evidence of systematic discrimination made his case untenable, and he eventually dropped the threat. Hutchins struggled to find work in retail security after his termination. His departure from Morrison after 28 years raised questions from potential employers, and when they learned the circumstances, most declined to hire him. Meanwhile, Vanessa implemented sweeping changes at Morrison Minneapolis. She hired a new security director, a black woman named Tasha Williams, who'd worked in loss prevention for Target and had expertise in preventing theft without profiling customers. Under Tasha's leadership, security protocols were completely rewritten to emphasize customer service and explicitly prohibit profiling. Vanessa also reached out to the 33 black customers who'd complained about security harassment over the previous 3 years. She apologized personally, offered them gift cards as a gesture of goodwill, and invited them to return to a Morrison store committed to treating all customers with respect. Many of those customers shared their experiences on social media, praising Vanessa's responsiveness and Morrison's apparent commitment to change. The posts generated positive publicity and helped rebuild trust with customers of color who'd been driven away by previous discrimination. 6 months after the Hutchins incident, Morrison Minneapolis was showing significant improvement. Customer satisfaction scores had increased by 18 points. Sales were up 11% compared to the previous year. Employee morale had improved measurably in internal surveys. Vanessa attributed the success to multiple factors, but she believed addressing the discrimination problem had been crucial. Customers felt welcome. Employees felt proud to work in a store with clear values. The entire culture had shifted. 1 year after Vanessa became store director, Morrison's CEO visited the Minneapolis location. After touring the store and reviewing performance data, he pulled Vanessa aside. "What you've accomplished here is remarkable. You've turned around our most troubled store, while also addressing cultural problems we should have fixed years ago. Corporate wants to expand your authority. We'd like you to oversee implementation of anti-discrimination protocols at all Morrison locations nationwide. You'd keep your director position here, while also serving as vice president for equity and inclusion at the corporate level." Vanessa accepted the expanded role. Over the next 3 years, she helped transform security and customer service practices across all Morrison stores. She implemented training programs, revised policies, created accountability mechanisms, and established clear consequences for discrimination. The changes weren't universally popular. Some longtime security personnel resisted, arguing that profiling was necessary for effective loss prevention. Several security chiefs left Morrison rather than adopt the new protocols, but the results were undeniable. Customer satisfaction increased at every location that implemented the changes, and loss prevention actually became more effective when security staff focused on behaviors rather than demographics.
5 years after the Hutchins incident, Morrison Department Stores was featured in a retail industry case study about addressing discrimination. The case study detailed how a security chief's profiling of the new store director had exposed systematic problems and catalyzed company-wide reform. Brad Hutchins was interviewed for the case study. He'd eventually found work as a security supervisor at a small warehouse facility, a significant step down from his previous position. "I thought I was doing my job well," Hutchins said in the interview. "I'd been in retail security for 3 decades, and I thought I knew how to spot shoplifters. But looking back, I see that my assumptions about who was likely to steal were based on racial stereotypes, not actual evidence. When I followed Vanessa Harper through that store and accused her of theft, I was making judgments based on her race and age, not her behavior. The worst part is realizing how many legitimate customers I harassed over the years. People who came to Morrison to shop, who had money to spend, who deserved to be treated with respect. Instead, I followed them, questioned them, and made them feel like criminals. I drove business away from Morrison, and I harmed real people. I lost my career because of it. But the customers I mistreated lost something too, the ability to shop without being suspected and watched." 10 years after becoming store director, Vanessa Harper was promoted to executive vice president of operations for Morrison Department Stores, overseeing all retail locations nationwide. At 43, she was the highest-ranking black executive in the company's history. In an interview marking the anniversary of her Minneapolis appointment, Vanessa reflected on how her first day had shaped her career and the company. "When Brad Hutchins accused me of theft, I was humiliated and furious. I'd worked for Morrison for years. I'd just been promoted to store director, and my own security chief was treating me like a criminal. It would have been easy to just be angry about what happened to me personally. But I realized that morning that I'd experienced what many black customers experienced regularly at Morrison stores. The difference was that I had the authority to do something about it. We didn't just fire Brad Hutchins. We examined why he felt comfortable profiling customers for years without consequence. We looked at training, policies, oversight, and accountability. We found systematic problems and we fixed them. That's what leadership means, using power to create change that benefits everyone, not just addressing the immediate incident." Vanessa concluded, "People sometimes ask if I regret how my first day as store director went. Honestly, no. It was painful and unfair, but it gave me clarity about what needed to change. Brad Hutchins profiled the wrong person, not because I was more important than the other customers he'd harassed, but because I had the position and platform to ensure his discrimination would no longer be ignored or excused. That accountability transformed not just one store but an entire company. That's worth more than an easy first day at work." The story of Vanessa Harper's first day became legendary in retail management circles. The new director who was arrested by her own security chief and turned that experience into company-wide reform. It was taught in business schools as a case study in leadership and organizational change. And at Morrison Department Stores across the country, security staff learned about Brad Hutchins, not as a villain to be condemned, but as a cautionary example of how unexamined bias could destroy careers while harming both customers and the business itself. The lesson was clear. Discrimination had consequences, not just for victims but for perpetrators and institutions. And when someone with power experienced that discrimination directly, they could choose to use their authority either for personal grievance or for systematic change. Vanessa had chosen change. Brad Hutchins had profiled and arrested his new boss on her first day. That catastrophic error in judgment had cost him his career, but had ultimately made Morrison Department Stores better for everyone who walked through their doors.
Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.